we go. There.
Worldwide, faith-based, community-driven streaming media. This is The Voice 17104.com from the Allison Hill District of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Now broadcasting community radio from Studio A and community television from Studio B on The Voice 17104.com.
Welcome, my brothers and sisters, to the Richard James Show on 17104, The Voice. Greetings, my friends, and salutations. Welcome again to the Richard James Show. It's a wonderful day in the neighborhood. It's a wonderful day just to be alive and be able to enjoy God's blessings. Today, we're going home. We're going back to Mother Africa. And we've said it over and over again, and I think you know it by now, that Africa is the birthplace of civilization. As a matter of fact, scientists, both Black and white and Asian, all agree that it all began in Africa. And today I feel very, very positive. I'm going to lift up, they said the least of them should be blessed. I am going to lift up the smallest country on the mainland in Africa. Small only in terms of size, but not in terms of the things that they have accomplished. Gambia. Gambia. Wonderful country. Gambia is surrounded by the country of Senegal. In other words, Gambia is a strip of land. If you go from west to east, following a river, the Gambian River. And north, south, and east is all the country of Senegal. Now, why is that? What sense does that make? Well, you had two competing nations, colonial nations. And the definition of, shall we say, the borders of these two nations were not created by Africans, but by Europeans. Senegal was colonized by the British, English-speaking country. Gambia was colonized by the French. So you had two major competing European nations that have defined the geography of all of Africa, and particularly Gambia and Senegal. And when you look at the ethnic groups that are in Gambia and that are in Senegal, many of them are the same groups. You have the Fulani. You have the Mandingo. Gambia is predominantly Mandingo. Both Gambia and Senegal are predominantly Islamic, with a small percentage of Christians in each nation. And the wonderful thing that I have learned from talking to my many friends that are from both countries is that they get along. I would just share something to you. My daughter was raised up as a Christian and went to a Christian school, and her husband is Muslim. Have two beautiful children. They've been married for almost 13 years, doing wonderfully well. But then I find out they do well anyway with people of different religions. One thing about our Gambian friends is that they are business oriented. They have a history of doing well with economic development, of taking what they have and developing it into something. If you look at the history of the Mandingo people, historically, one of the greatest of the Mandingos was a man by the name of Mansa Musa. Mansa Musa was the emperor, he was the king, he was the ruler, of the Mandingo people. He came out of Mali, and the Mandingos spread to other African nations, including Gambia, which is predominantly Mandingo. And just to remind you of things that we've talked about in the past, it was the Mandingo people of Africa who were some of the first Africans to reach the shores of America. Mandingos traded and interacted with so-called Native Americans, who many of them were of Asian heritage, established, shall we say, settlements in the New World. That was the Mandingo people. You might remember a novel called Mandingo. Mandingo was noted as being strong warriors, but I have learned that Mandingos also have very, very strong and intelligent minds. All of the Mandingos that I know are extremely intelligent and bright. And we have here in the Harrisburg community a large Gambian community. You have Gambians who have set up their businesses, who are working every day, who have families that are doing well and are an intricate part of the Harrisburg community. Gambia also was put on the map back in the early 70s by a man by the name of Alex Haley, who wrote a series called Roots. Alex Haley traced his ancestry back to Gambia. You have one ancestry organization called 23andMe, in which you can trace your genealogy back sometimes hundreds of years and many generations. Well, Alex Haley did that in the 70s. He discovered that his ancestors came from Gambia. And back in the day, when slavery was high, they had an island called James Island. And many of the so-called slaves here in America were brought here from Gambia. Now, I have a video that I want to show you. I have a couple of videos that I want to show you that will share with you more specific information about this country. And then we're going to dialogue. Why is Richard James so interested in Gambia? He is. Go right ahead.
These people in the Gambia didn't expect to be protesting again. Several years ago, they demanded Yahya Jammeh step down from power. Now they're renewing their calls for justice and no impunity for those who committed crimes during the former president's 22-year rule. A panel called the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparations Commission was set up in 2017 to investigate allegations of murder, torture and rape. But its findings that were set to be published in July have been delayed.
As victims ourselves, we show our dissatisfaction and our continuous efforts to show that what we need is justice and no substitution for it. Before reconciliation, we want to have justice first before any other thing.
In September, Jammeh's Alliance for Patriotic Reorientation and Construction Party announced an alliance with the governing National People's Party ahead of presidential elections in December. It shocked and angered many to see the President Adam Barrow team up with the party that ruled for 22 years and is seen as having supported and committed human rights abuses during that period.
We have a duty to our country and to our people to ensure that never again on this soil should these dehumanizing things happen, the violation of rights. And also to remind our government that they have a role to play and they must take the lead, they must demonstrate leadership in moving the TRRC process forward.
Barrow beat Jammeh in a presidential election in 2016. But despite saying he would call for new elections after 3 years, in 2019 he changed his mind and said he would see out his 5-year term. There's also concerns that the former president could make a return. He fled to Equatorial Guinea after a 6-week standoff following the 2016 elections and a military intervention by neighbouring countries. This new alliance has led some to believe that Barrow is trying to hold on to power. And if they're right, those seeking justice fear they could be sidelined. Asad Beg, Al Jazeera.
That's just a note of modern day history and what's happening in the country of Gambia. I do understand that things have reached a level playing at this point, and the unrest that existed for a while is no longer there. So that's a good thing. But I wanted to, before I started, to let you know what's been happening with this situation. And so what we're going to do now, we have a second video that we're going to show that will give you not just a historical perspective, but also will give you some information on exactly what is happening now and what is happening overall, and just something about the country of Gambia. We're going to show the second video.
Ancient Greece has its heroes, its gods, and its legends. In the western part of the continent is a little swath of land that follows the course of a river, which witnessed important episodes of world history. The river is called the Gambia. The country is called the Gambia. And here, in this colorful region of the world, they tell their history mainly in music. Our voyage begins in Dakar, the Senegalese megalopolis that has one of West Africa's largest ports. The Pegasus, a cruise boat sailing under the Greek flag, is patiently awaiting its new passengers. It's not by chance that our boat leaves from Dakar, since we're headed for the Gambia, also known simply as Gambia, a country which, due to manipulations by the European powers, is entirely surrounded by Senegal. For centuries, the gold, gum arabic, and ivory trades thrived in this part of Africa, but it depended on river transportation. So the Senegal River in the north and the Gambia River further south became strategic regions, highly coveted regions.
Des marchands Traders, both European and local, were competing via these two axes. Of course, the French and English were vying for the control of these two rivers. It went back and forth between the French and the English 3 times. Around 1775, the English defeated the French, occupied St. Louis, occupied the Senegal River as far as its upper reach, and they also controlled Gambia at the same time, creating, for a very short time, in the last quarter of the 18th century, a colony they called Senegambia. But that was very short-lived, because soon after, at the end of the 18th century, the French once again wrested Senegal back from the English, but the English maintained control of Gambia.
Trying to get the different versions of history in tune is not always easy, especially when one is paper and the other is a melody.
All the stories and history of Africa is lying between the strings of that instrument. We believe that one Jali killed is like the whole library burnt down. I belong to a family called the Jali family, which is known as the Giriot family. But if you say Giriot family or Jali family, Gambia is a small country, but 5 or 6 different speaking tribes. But all these tribes have their Jali. It's just like they use different names for it. For example, French they call Jali Girio. But then in Mandinka they call Jali, in Wolof they call Jewel, and in Fula they call Nyenyo. It's all the same word, but it's different speaking language.
Our course is set for the south. We have about 20 passengers on board, all passionate nature lovers, all curious about Africa. The Pegasus enters the delta shared by 2 rivers, the Sine and the Saloum, near the Sangomar Point, a natural curiosity. A long sandbank keeps the pounding waves of the ocean at bay, protecting the villages of the delta and favoring fishing around the islands of the delta. Exploring this region between river and ocean, between fresh and salt water, the voyagers get a good idea of what this cruise holds in store for them. Here they're discovering the realm of the mangrove swamp, where the naturally rich waters have been feeding the inhabitants for centuries and have made a favorable habitat for a wide variety of birds. But the natural protection of this zone is being threatened. On the Senegalese coast, there's great concern over the advance of the ocean, and the Saloum Islands are in the danger zone.
Before, there used to be a sandbank connecting Gfer and Sangomar. Then in 1986, there was a little storm that opened a breach in the sandbank, and ever since it has been getting washed away little by little. You see the distance there is now between what you could call the point of Gfer and the point of Sangomar. As a consequence, the mangrove swamp has been receding on account of the salinization of the soil. And when the mangrove ecosystem is affected, there is a whole range of aquatic resources that will be endangered and disappear.
ngay dem mel na ku jëm fële après ñu dem léegi.
Mamadou Mbodji has come from Dakar to study the impact of the changes on the communities around Jiffer. He regularly comes to the villages to evoke environmental problems. The local inhabitants are now aware of their responsibility in this advance of the ocean. Here with Ibrahima, the head of the village, they're trying to come up with concrete solutions.
Et ça a marché, ça a très bien marché. Alors, le risque, c'est la disparition des îles.
So there's a risk that the Saloum Islands could disappear, and it's a very real risk, because there's a variety of activities going on that perhaps favor the progression of the sea, namely the extraction of sand from the inland side of the Sangomar Point for all the construction. So when you have that going on, it really makes it hard to combat the advance of the sea.
Not far from the ocean lies the city of Banjul. This city, which used to be called Barthurst before independence in 1965, is above all a trading and fishing port, bustling with dockers and sailors. There is no bridge spanning the Gambia River. The only way to get across are the few ferries shuttling back and forth. Then, whether you go north or south, you necessarily end up in Senegal once again after about 20 kilometers. To really visit Gambia, you have to follow the river up to the easternmost tip of the country, where you once again end up in Senegalese territory. Even though the Portuguese, English, and French fought over Gambia for centuries, the influence of the Mandingo culture can now be felt throughout this land, that is home to many other ethnic groups as well, whose families overflow the country's very narrow borders. And the river remains an important economic asset.
The same land, the same culture, the same people, the same language. It was only the French and English who tried to differentiate the people in an official way. There's a lot of trade between Gambia and Senegal, or one should say between the north and the south of Senegal. You always have to cross the river. So there was a time, particularly during Douada Jawara, our first president, there was a push to build a bridge over the Gambia River. But there would be a toll, and even the Gambians would have to pay. If you went ahead and got rid of all these ferries, it would have an adverse effect on the Gambian economy.
Gambia is governed by a former army officer, Yahya Jammeh, an African strongman much criticized by human rights activists. Since his rise to power in 1994, the country has been marching to his tune and singing the praise of its president. Thanks to tourism and agriculture, the country's economy has made great strides forward. But out of a population of 1.5 million, 60% still live isolated in the rural areas, often far from any roads, electricity, and hospitals. The unity and stability of the country owe a lot to the system of education, which the president has sought to improve, in particular by founding a university. Gambia is also constructing its own history, which is showcased in several museums, and whose shadowy zones are no longer being concealed.
When the Europeans arrived, at first they were only interested in trade. So what they did was, they signed treaties with the local chiefs and the kings so as to give them, trading rights and trading monopolies. Now here trading, what were the items of trade? First was slaves. There was a lot of trade in slaves, okay, at this time. And I can say hundreds of thousands of people, were moved from this region, to the Americas and the Caribbean. Such that the Europeans, they built like a lot of trading centers and trading posts along the river. And now, in these trading centers, you had a mixture of European population and African population.
Farafindu jamana janna Tubabol ya gunda kinde sama Farafindu jamana janna
Like this island was first captured by the Portuguese, and they actually started slavery. But later the French also, they came and they took over the island, and British were the last people to arrive. And all the slaves that we are captured in the Gambia, they all have to go through this island. This island plays a very important role during the time of slavery. All the villages in the Gambia were all affected. But this village of Alebreda and Jufure, we are mainly affected simply because of the island. Because the slave masters could just easily cruise to the mainland and they do their hunting. And every day or after 2 days, they could always have 1 or 2 catch. But slaves were captured in both areas and we are all transported in this island. And they will have to stay here for a fortnight before they are all transported.
Farafindu jamana janna
Jufour, the little village just across from James Island, has become famous thanks to the novel Roots, written by the American descendant of an African slave. The story of Kunta Kinte, written in 1976, relates his capture in the forest, his voyage in a ship's hold, the revolts of the exiles, and lastly, his life in slavery, with his attempts to escape and the mutilations he suffered as a result. Alex Haley, author of the book and descendant of Kunta Kinte, tracked down his family through the registers of the English shipping companies. Then he made the trip to the land of his ancestors, Gambia. He listened to the griot's song and went 7 generations back in time until he came upon the young Mandingo who was out in the forest looking for wood to carve a drum.
Now, one way to escape was to hide in the forest. To hide in the rice fields. Okay? Now, some also, they used to, wound themselves. You see? Yeah, so as to avoid capture. Because when you wound yourself, maybe like you cut your leg or you cut your hand, and then nobody will want to sell you as a slave because you cannot catch a good price. And another way, to protect yourself was to become a slave dealer. Yeah. You become a slave dealer, you have your firearm, you protect yourself and your family, and also you capture people who are powerless. Yeah.
More and more American descendants of slaves are making the pilgrimage back to these shores, where a museum has been consecrated to them. They don't all manage to find the family of their ancestors, but Alex Haley did get that chance. Thanks to the testimony of this family, we've touched the thread of a story that has deep roots in oral tradition.
The family of Kunta Kinte, if you call those people slave here, they will kill you. They are from a royal family. But if a royal family is taken to America, for example in England, how would they know that you are a king family?
What my parents told me about Kunta Kinte was that his father, who was from a very well-educated family, had written on the kitab that foreigners had abducted his son and then sold him on James Island, which they now call Sandimuko Joyo.
Every 2 years, the Roots Festival is held on the banks of the Gambia River. It's the opportunity for Americans, West Indians, and Africans to commemorate the triangular trade. The great majority of people who visit Gambia, often from Northern Europe, are fervent birdwatchers. They come to observe the birds' natural behavior along the banks of the river and in the mangrove swamps. How they fish, nest, and reproduce.
The hammock up nest. And you can see the hole underneath. That's the entrance. They are so wise, they have to do it like this, just to avoid the reptiles to come and get the young ones. Oh, there's a western reef heron here.
There are more than 600 species listed in the country, and new ones are being discovered every year. This love of birds, which was imported by the English, has now spread, and many young Gambians have also become bird experts, like Malik, who used to consider birds as prey.
I got interested on birds when I was at the age of 8 years, all right? But usually, I used to have a catapult shooting the birds, you know, and now I'm the #1 person who hates people shooting the birds because it is in my blood now. Likewise in everybody here. Here, when we have business, people go out for business. When we don't have business, you can see people, you know, working locally, just enjoying the birds. So actually, it is our hobby. This is where we earn our living out of it too. So we don't have any best job other than bird watching. Yes.
The animals are protected here, protected by law. Not only the birds, but all the animals. You're not allowed to keep them. Our first president was a veterinarian, and he knew the value of these animals. That's why he took measures to protect them.
The Pegasus is moored in front of the little village of Tendaba. It's time to go and meet the local inhabitants. In this quiet village where life flows to the rhythm of fishing, the call to prayers, and the children's games, history has left its mark, mainly in people's behavior. They still remember the African heroes who built the great Mandingo Empire. Sumaoro Kante, the sorcerer king who fought against Islam and slavery. Sunyata Keita, born handicapped, who extended the empire westward all the way to the ocean. Powerful influences that have marked the minds and traditions here.
The Mandingo are from Mali. They came here through Guinea-Bissau, where there was the Kabu Empire, and after that, they came here.
By the river?
No, there were no pirogues. They came here on horseback, by donkey, on foot. Mandingo is still spoken here, and we celebrate the feasts. For example, when a baby is born, we always carry the child into the forest. That's a Mandingo tradition. This is the spot where the English planted their flag. It was to show their grandeur and their might. The king here at the time was called Farang Tamba. Once the English raised their flag, we never again had a king.
Hanni waltilo mambambarado ya kolenda nefi longo kewdo ban. This song was composed in the 12th century when the Arabs traveled through the Sahara into West Africa, trading at the same time spreading Islam. That time the West African people don't believe in any religion. They believe in life and eat from nature and do all their things from nature. Samanga demba borita, samanga demba borita, demba mambore babalake, zanzamadara, keso wanda, kabu yanjo de borita.
After 4 days sailing upriver, daybreak finds the boat anchored before the village of Kontor. This is the end of the line for the catamaran. It will wait here while the passengers take an excursion in pirogue to Georgetown. And the crew will enjoy a well-earned rest.
There are many fishermen all over, and this is the most difficult situation when you navigate. Many fishermen all over with a lot of nets, and you have to be careful all the time to avoid and the boats and the nets. This is something special for the area because actually it's their main job, fishing of citizens of these countries.
Kontor is a hub city, home to a peanut factory and a vast market every Monday that bring the farmers, herdsmen, and vendors in from the surrounding areas. The Senegalese border is less than 10 kilometers away. All the ethnic groups come to the market, then they get back to their respective villages, which sometimes straddle the border.
They never respected the boundaries. Even today, after independence, the local people don't know about boundaries. You can cross the boundary to go and marry a wife, okay? You can cross the boundary, to go and, work your farm, and in the evening you come. You can cross the boundary, to go and attend a ceremony, okay, in the next village, and in the evening you come back. Okay, so still now, the boundaries for many people, they don't matter.
These regions were populated a long time ago, and the proof is these stone circles at Wasu, whose secrets are still intact. Sites which, if they were studied, could perhaps reveal something about our origins.
Le professeur Cheikh Anta Diop, il a même A professor said that the history of contemporary man began in Africa. And there was a lot of debate about the subject. But as more in-depth studies were carried out, it turned out that the history of contemporary man did indeed begin in Africa, because they were able to prove a lot of things that supported that theory.
A trip by pirogue to Georgetown, the former capital. The landscape has changed. The savanna has given way to dense forest where we can observe protected animals. A primate specialist has come on board to give a little talk and answer the travelers' questions.
These chimpanzees, a lot of them came from around West Africa, in Guinea and Senegal and the Gambia. There was a large pet trade coming through here during the 80s and 70s, and so that's where they got a lot of the chimpanzees. Also, some of them came from California, some of them came from out in Denmark, through UK and Europe. Now, there may be a few that are Eastern, and that would be something that they would need to study, determine how pure the genetic lineage is here, if it's purely West African or if there's a different subspecies here. On the island, nobody's allowed. The chimpanzees are very susceptible to human diseases, and also the chimpanzees are quite aggressive since they are familiar with humans. In the Gambia, the chimpanzees had disappeared around the early 1900s, along with a lot of other large mammal species here in the Gambia. It's become densely populated along the river. And so elephants died out around that time, giraffes, and then lions and other animals continued to die out later on, become extinct within the Gambia. But the chimpanzees were brought back up in the late 1970s to the islands, where they cannot escape from because they don't swim.
Gambia has now made a firm commitment to preserving its natural environment, for this goes hand in hand with the development of tourism. In their concern over this subject, the decision makers of economic development have taken measures, like this new boat for the excursions on the river. It's a little revolution. It just arrived in Banjul from Germany, where it was made, and it will mean a savings of 1,000 liters of fuel per week and a commensurate reduction of the impact on the environment. The sun-powered boat has been christened the Solar Queen.
We have a solar installation. You can see it on the roof. Those are solar panels, but we also have a generator here in front, and the batteries are underneath. So, if we want to go faster, we can turn on the generators, which means that we can reach speeds of maybe up to 16 kilometers an hour. And our campsite is also 100% solar. So at night, there's no noise, no generators. You hear the birds, the owls.
There's nothing Mark Thompson enjoys more than nature and silence. His dream for Gambia is to get tourists to visit the upper stretches of the river.
Most of the tourism here in Gambia is at the seaside resorts, so that means the big hotels on the coast. But what we do at Hidden Gambia is something a little different, because the special thing about Gambia is the river. Most people never even see the river. The further upriver you go, the prettier it gets. There are hippos, chimpanzees, so many different kinds of birds.
The river and the forest mingle in the mangrove swamp, and very few hotels have chosen to set up in this rather offbeat location.
Makasutu, the word Makasutu is a Mandinka word, and if you break it down, Maka is Mecca, as in the Saudi Arabia holy land for Muslims, and Sutu means forest. And there's a lot of history, a lot of folklore about the area, and we've had kings, we've got a king's head, his crown and throne buried somewhere on the land after tribal battles that took place here hundreds of years ago. The government were really supportive of us right from the very beginning, and the local people at first thought we were white devils or something at first because of the history behind this area, and they thought that we'd have to be devils to actually live here because the people believed the devil lived on Makasutu. But then once we started employing people, it went really well, and as I say, we've had up to 260 people working here at certain times, and we try to put everything back into the community, and we only employ from this area. We don't employ people from outside of the actual kind of all the villages around us. So we try to keep it specifically for this community.
We're going to pause now. Pause in terms of this video. It's an hour long. You get the idea. You get some overview about the country of Gambia, rich in history, rich in terms of economics, coming back from the virus. You know, the world was shut down for a period of time. Moving forward, again, I want to state that we have a Gambian community here, right here in Harrisburg, that has its own association, who get together and interact with each other and help to support each other and help support the community. They're not just off to themselves like some communities are, but they interact with other members of the community. My family and I am very, very close to Gambia, to be quite honest with you. I was in business with a young lady named Kumba Saho, who was born and raised in Gambia, one of the most wonderful human beings on the planet Earth. Worked very closely with her, got to know her children, her wonderful husband, Omar. Got to know her wonderful brother. As a matter of fact, we worked together doing an after-school program for the high school for several years. She taught African dance. And we're friends. I mean, we're friends. It's nothing artificial, not something that's just artificially put together. It's very, very, very real. Supported them when the birth of children that came into the world. It's just a great thing. Get to know Gambia. Put Gambia on your list of places to visit. You can see that it's safe. They do have resort hotels if you like the conference of modern day society. And if you want to get out into the bush, you know, they have this cruise that will take you up the Gambian River. So we highly encourage you to do that. Think about Gambia. Put Gambia on your list. My son-in-law is from, and I mentioned this time and time again, from Senegal. Once we put together a reception for him and invited many of our Gambian friends, And at that time, I didn't realize that some of these were the same ethnic groups singing the same language. It was a wonderful, wonderful occasion. Again, we coming down very closely near the end of the program, and we want to lift up African Paradise. Let me show you something. Hold on a sec. This is a handmade African drum. I won't hit it because the sound doesn't come off well. It's called djembe, and we were able to acquire a large stock of large, beautiful djembes that we have at African Paradise. And again, I'm going to tell you where African Paradise is for those who are interested in taking a look at some of the things that we have. This is a picture of my stand. You can see that there's a djembe here. There's also original art, which is from Guinea-Bissau. There's African clothing, and we've also put up Santa Claus, Black Santa Claus. Santa Claus is right there. We're now getting into the Christmas season. We have jewelry, we have masks. There's our Santa Claus there, and there's one of our wonderful masters from the Ivory Coast, and then we have our little black man. So we have a number of things, but in order to stay afloat and stay alive, we need more than just verbal support. It's not that expensive. We have items that start with 50 cents. And then we have items that go up to $1,000, just particularly what you're interested in. We have oils. Take a look at the oils. Take a look at the clothing. Look at the tall 4-foot giraffes. We have cats, masks. We have a large array of things for your liking. So come by and see us. Take a look at it, and we'll work out things for you financially. If we can give you a discount, we'll do that. But if you want us to continue, please give us your support. It's called African Paradise. As you can see the sign, African Paradise, because first of all, we're just happy to be there. We're happy to do it. So and when you get a chance, come by and see us and participate. Now, the address, again, is 35 South 8th Street. Put that in your GPS, 35 South 8th Street. It is located in the Lebanon Valley Farmers Market. Lebanon Valley Farmers Market. Wonderful market. Lots of food items, lots of wonderful people who interact. I've been there a couple of years now, and I've enjoyed the stay and continue to enjoy it, and to continue to enjoy the support of the owners of that market. So we need you. You need us. Please come by. I want to just say something briefly. My stay here at 17104, working with the Thomases, has been a wonderful experience. It continues to be a wonderful experience. And as long as I can, I will continue to do this broadcast. When I initially started this before I started this broadcast, I was a guest on Life Esteem, the Nate Gaskin show that appears also on 17104. That was a brief stay. And then I was able to acquire my own program and do this. I've not communicated lately with the Gaskins. Had a pleasure of seeing them at a NAACP Freedom Fund dinner the other night with his wonderful wife, Pat. And I'm going to extend an invitation on the air for Brother Gaskin, to come and do a joint appearance with me on my show. It's been a while since we communicated. I think it's time that we start to do so. And if he has the time, we'd love to have him. They have a wonderful show. He is a veteran in terms of broadcasting. We've been in the arena both been in the arena for many, many, many years. and have a consciousness and a love for not only our people, but for our people, all people. So I'm going to extend that invite. Would love to have him. We will be getting in touch with him to see what his particular feeling is about that, or what his availability is. And I want to say to the other individuals that are on 17104 that isn't it great to be here? It's just a good place to be here, and it's just wonderful that it exists. Nothing like this has ever existed before in Harrisburg, and to my knowledge, I don't know where you will find in Pennsylvania this type of broadcasting mechanism that will encourage us to do some positive things. You know, we have positive, uplifting things that come on the air. We have information that is critical to people and critical to their survival. And we care about people. You know, I mean, we care about individuals. You don't have the extreme right or the extreme left. You don't have the racism, the sexism that exists. What you have is people just about trying to do work that we've been anointed and appointed to do, like, and that's what it's all about. Every week we'll bring you something new. We are particularly leaning toward Africa. That is our home. That is where mankind began. But it is Africa in America. We are Americans as well as Africans, and we love the two. So this is Richard James. We're coming down to the end. I lift up also my good friend that has passed on, Toby Young. I lift up my good friend, Olin Harris, who were some of the pioneers in this whole broadcasting industry. Both of them were placed in the Gospel Hall of Fame. Both of them sang. Both of them were great humanitarians who put forth their work, and their children continued their episode. So when I say your neighbor and your friend, those are the words of the late Toby Young and Richard James. God bless you. I love you. And until next week, this is Richard James saying so long and goodbye.
Thank you again for tuning in to the Richard James Show. Our African and our African American programs are set up to educate you on what's going on in this world. We thank you for taking out the time to listen. Let us hear from you sometime also. So this is your neighbor and your friend signing off. Until I see you again next week and hear from you again next week. So long. God bless.